Big conferences have gotten crowded, and getting the attention of multifamily decision makers is harder than ever, until now. Introducing the Virtual AI and Innovation Forums from Commercial Observer. This is where hundreds of leading multifamily owner-operators, property managers, investors, developers, and asset managers gather to better understand how AI and emerging technologies are shaping multifamily. The next Virtual AI and Innovation Forum, which is called Reimagining Multifamily Through AI, Experience, and Data, is set for September 29. The event is designed to showcase your products and CEO's expertise, elevate your team's thought leadership, provide premier high-impact opportunities to connect with new clients, and expand your brand awareness to a national multifamily audience. If you'd like to learn more about how to participate, send me an email, ecohen@commercialobserver.com, or click the link in the show notes. I'm excited to help you reach multifamily decision makers. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. This is Tangent, a Commercial Observer podcast. The most significant piece of federal housing legislation in decades just became law without a presidential signature. The 21st Century Renters' Opportunity, Autonomy, and Democracy to Housing Act passed the U.S. House and Senate with overwhelming bipartisan majority. The law to increase housing supply and affordability, among other things, it restricts large institutional investors from buying more than 350 single-family homes, changes in how manufactured homes get financed, and buried inside it is a provision that makes rent reporting one of the primary ways a large landlord can keep buying homes above the ownership cap. How far the supply piece goes depends on what states and cities do with it. Now, in the US, there are 46 million renter households. Every one of them goes through a screening process before they get a lease. Most of that screening still runs on a credit pool, a background check, and a database match that stops short of verifying whether an identity is real. Fraud gets through, qualified applicants get flagged, and the operators running these decisions have no single place to see any of it. Our guest today is Rob Whiting, co-founder and CEO of Boom. Rob, where does this podcast find you?
Austin, Texas, where our company is based.
Austin and Texas have certainly been at the forefront of housing production in the last few years to the benefit of renters and some homeowners. Depends when you bought, depends when you rented.
Yeah, I'm 15, 16, 17 years post-college, still renting here myself and actually looking at a rental right now. And it's been good. There's a lot of supply in the market, so you can definitely say that.
So before we get into the Housing Act and into Boom, your company, give us the background. You were in healthcare, education, and now housing. These are three pillars of society worldwide. So what pulled you towards rentals specifically?
Yeah, I come from a middle class family. I was fortunate to, after graduation, go abroad, do some traveling on a fellowship, then eventually did consulting. And then I wanted to go tackle some of these bigger problems. I had already done some of the education stuff while I was in college, was interested in both health and housing. And if you look at the kind of three big cost buckets of everyday Americans, it's those three. And those are the things that are inflating over time pretty significantly from a cost perspective and makes up an outsized percentage of the budget of kind of your everyday Americans. My brothers still work in the service industry, bar back, server, that sorts of things. And kind of had a very brief tenure in the healthcare space, was very interested in that, had a couple things that were moving, but ultimately gravitated towards housing. Boom really started during COVID, and brothers were kind of impacted by losing their jobs when all the restaurants shut down, needed a new job, helped them edit their resume, add some spare time. And then I was like, well, they also needed more affordable rental. And I was like, well, I'm already looking at the space. I'd done some work on the side with a private equity fund that was diligencing one of the major PMSs out there for a significant investment. And so I was kind of getting familiar with the space, was already interested in it. And as I went down that path with them, I saw a lot of the problems from the resident side. Even though I'm still a renter myself, I'm probably more on the Class A-ish side. That's kind of really where this interest comes from. I think it's just the personal background.
Certainly no shame in renting. I mean, there's arguably and verifiably better places to park your money if you're thinking about buying a home as an investment, right? If you're thinking of buying a home as a lifestyle choice or because you need to prioritize certain aspects of your lifestyle and have stability, that's understandable, but no shame in renting. I still a renter and hoping to rent many more years.
Well, I don't have the time to go do housing care and take care of all those things. I was traveling last few days up to Michigan, and I got a text from my wife, raccoon upstairs in the room, paw prints all over my desk. And then I was like, well, we're moving out in 2 weeks. Not really my problem. And it eventually got out for the time being, but that's a whole bigger thing. So there are some definite pros to renting, and I'm definitely happy to do it for now.
For me, it's just the ultimate, what you own ends up owning you. I don't want to be dealing with raccoons myself. So the 21st Century Road to Housing Act just became law. And for context, we're recording this on July 17th. For people in this audience who haven't been tracking it as you have, what is it and why does it matter?
So the Road to Housing Act is a large bill that has a bunch of stuff in it related to different subverticals of housing. It's something that we've been tracking for a while. I actually wrote about it a while back when the 7-year limit was in there. There was a lot more teeth in it. And I was in DC with the National Rental Housing Council. We actually visited a few lawmakers the day that it was signed, or that it was like basically re-voted on to push back to the other chamber for the final review. So we've been close to it. Basically, there's a bunch of provisions in there, and the broad idea was to expand housing access for your everyday Americans, and home ownership being a big piece of that. There are a couple areas where they get some of the outsized publicity, primarily on the single family rentals and built to rent side, limitations on your publicly traded REITs like your Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rents. But there was stuff related to manufactured housing, stuff relevant to us to rent reporting, as you mentioned. So a lot in there, and a lot of nuance that I think has gotten missed in the reporting on it that I've seen so far.
So one of the main provisions that is catching that headlines and could impact institutional investors is that the bill restricts institutional investors with 300 or more single family homes from buying more. So what are the exemptions here, and how do operators qualify to keep buying more homes, and what are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, it's a big piece of it because, as you know, any major notable institutional owner is going to have more than 350, your AMH, your Tricon, et cetera. There are a bunch of accepted purchases. What that 350 limit means is, like, if you have 350 homes today, you're in scope, those count towards your limit. You don't have to sell those or dispose of them or anything if you go over, but they do count towards your limit. Now, anything beyond that you want to buy or build in terms of the portfolio, those do fall under some requirements, or if you want to do them and not have to sell them immediately, you have to get some what they call accepted purchases, some exceptions. There are a handful of exceptions that go A through J, and there's many ways to qualify. And there are two in particular that I think are going to be most utilized by the ones you think about that I just mentioned in the space that they're going to utilize.
It's interesting because although institutional investors own roughly 3% of single family rental homes nationwide, certain cities, their presence may top 20%. However, that's not nearly enough to even cause a dent or impact rent pricing, or that's what it is being argued on the institutional investor side. So, we don't have a crystal ball. Do you think this is going to improve housing affordability and housing supply, or it's very much TBD because it depends on the local governments at the end of the day?
Yeah, someone asked me, how big of a deal is this? I said it's kind of a medium to large. It's meaningful for sure. And at medium, there's a bunch of dimensions of this bill. For the SFR BTR space, what would be a massive deal? A massive deal would be if they did limit, like they did keep the 7-year limit, they did keep some hard caps.
Just to clarify, you mentioned the 7-year limit a couple of times. For those who aren't familiar, tell us about the 7-year limit.
Originally, Elizabeth Warren put a term in there that said you can't hold single family or built to rent homes longer than 7 years, and then you had to offer them and sell them up. So basically this whole concept of a publicly traded REIT that you're holding and renting out homes just wouldn't exist effectively.
That's interesting. Was it American Homes for Rent or Home Partners of America? Didn't one of them have a model where that's exactly what they did, though, as part of their investment thesis?
I believe it was Home Partners of America. Was this like a home ownership, path to home ownership?
Right.
The path to home ownership thing is, there's Divvy Homes, who we used to work with, now work with Maimon. This model has a bunch of different permutations. But at any rate, there was this 7-year cap. That's where that came out. That was the big talk of the town at the IMN BTR conference a few months back. And that did get taken out. I believe most people thought this is a bargaining chip to get other things in. And the Elizabeth Warrens of the world were probably recognizing this might not be in there at the end, but is a point of leverage for getting this through with some other terms. But going back to, there's a bunch of different, what they call accepted purchases. This is, if you read into the bill, there's a section 1001. It basically says, yeah, you got the 350 cap, but you can buy more beyond that and you can still have more if these homes fall into one of, I don't know, it's like 9, whatever A through J totals up to, with 9 exceptions. And the 2 that I think are going to be most utilized are for new construction is accepted purchase B, which if you look at this, basically says any new construction, hey, we want to encourage new construction. So basically any new construction we're good with. And so that is a core model of the Tricons, First Keys, AMHs, those types of big vertically integrated players. It's not all of it, but building new BTR communities is a piece. Those are accepted out.
Not multifamily.
So the whole thing doesn't apply to multifamily. And it also, this 350 cap doesn't apply to multifamily. It doesn't apply to manufactured housing. It's explicitly single family, this SFR BTR space. The other part is existing home acquisition, which is, I think, the bigger piece. There are some places, like you mentioned, 20%. I think it's like there's Jacksonville, Florida, my hometown. There's Atlanta, Phoenix, your Sunbelt markets where these companies do make up a larger percentage. I'm not an economist. I spend my time worrying about different types of problems than how does this impact pricing. And when I think it also matters when a new home goes on the market, who's bidding, right? It's not just like who owns the homes. I actually think who has the bidding power and who's putting those bids. So I don't know. I'm not going to be an expert there, but I do think these verticalized players, they have 2 things. They're building new stuff and they're buying stuff. And the build new stuff is going to be business as usual because there was a accepted purchase carved out for that. That's point B. And the buy new stuff, I think there's a few ways they can qualify, but the most easiest, so to speak, is accepted option E, which basically says, if you do sell, you got to give the resident at the time 30 days to right of first refusal to buy it. That's one piece. Part B is you need to offer positive rent reporting, which is good for us. Boom, we offer rent reporting through our Boom Report product. And 3 is you may offer some financial support. It says may, which my interpretation of that is it means it's not required. So it effectively means just offer rent reporting. And then if you do sell it, make it available to the renter to buy at a fair market price as the first one who gets to see it. So there's other ways, but they're a bit more stringent and have some harder requirements. So that's what I expect them to take advantage of.
Yeah, so many nuances and key words in there that may change the entire meaning of the sentence or the provision. So does this mean boom time for BTR community developers, or what do you expect? Because it seems like that's a key way of adding new supply and also not going over the cap legally.
I think maybe is the answer. The reason I say that is already they could build. I don't know what the other pieces in the bill are around financing, if there was any special things that would give them more of a propulsion to build more stuff, but they could already build stuff before. So it may be neutral. What it does, and I do know, and I heard from others in the space, is in the past 6 to 12 months, there were a lot of projects that were put on hold and waiting for clarity. And I think there's a lag time on all of this stuff. So there will probably still be a few more months before people get going again. But I heard financing discussions kind of were put on pause, build discussions, and you got to get the contractors going. So I think a lot of that, probably there weren't as many starts on this new stuff in the last, call it 6 to 12 months, but that probably will restart here. It would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. So you hinted at this earlier, rent reporting. Rent reporting is one of the defined paths to becoming an accepted purchaser under the bill. So what does that mean in practice for a large owner trying to stay compliant and keep buying homes?
So what that means in practice is you need to offer rent reporting to your residents. It doesn't say you have to pay for it. So you can offer it at a fee. What it means to implement it, it means working with someone like us. There are a few other players, obviously, to integrate with your PMS. We track your rent payments. We verify they were paid for your residents, the ones who have opted in, and we report them. Now, optionally, we'll ledger the charges if you want to charge a couple bucks and our cost is XYZ. So there's an economic piece to it as well. Some of these operators will choose to just include it as part of the residency. So there's different models. from an economic standpoint, but it basically means tying up with someone like us and offering it to your residents. And it's putting a lease addendum around it or a way to acknowledge that you were offered it and or opt in. Now, I've already had some operators reach out to us. Like in the last week alone, we've had, I think, 4 notable names that I knew before reach out and ask to set up a meeting. Some people already had stuff in place as part of a resident amenity offering. So there's that. And we already work with a large number of folks, but that's effectively what it means.
So where, in the general picture, where does PropTech fit into all of this? Does the legislation create opportunity or uncertainty for tech companies servicing rental housing?
It definitely creates more certainty for sure. I think there's also other interesting stuff on the manufactured housing side. There's a number, and I don't know, again, I didn't study all the other parts of the bill. I'm sure there's other implications for other parts of the stack. But yeah, from what I can tell, it just encourages more new home construction, gives operators more clarity. So in general, I think it's positive.
Awesome. Let's move on and walk us through what Boom is today and who it's built for.
So what Boom is doing is we're building operational software for residential property managers. And this is everything from the leasing and syndication to the renewals. We don't do all of that today. Really, where we focus is on the leasing part of the experience primarily. Like I said, we do rent reporting, which is where we started. And as we did that, we got pretty good at integrations and data. And rent reporting is a thankless job. It's low dollar value, very difficult, easy to mess up, thousands of renters with individual nuances, and you're integrating with these old credit bureaus that have each different parameters and constraints and matching logic. So we got pretty good at that. And then through that, we launched our second product, Boom Screen, which is an applicant underwriting software for applications and screening, right? So residents find an interest in a property, they go to apply. Historically, there were some legacy solutions that I would call them either very rigid in how they approach things in terms of their criteria, their configuration. Over time, expectations of property managers have grown in terms of what they expect out of the user experience, and portfolios have gotten more complex. So we built Boom Screen, we've been scaling that, and Boom Report to hundreds of thousands of doors. And now we've launched our third product, which is Boom CRM, which is an agentic leasing and self-showing solution that works well with Boom Screen and sits on top of it.
So the trifecta, congratulations on launching your latest product. Tenant screening, I mean, to many, it sounds like a commodity. Credit check, background check, you move on. So how do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, it's a great call. And I actually, when we started looking into tenant screening, because like I said, we were doing rent reporting and people said, hey, you're good at sending data to credit bureaus. Can you pull data? And we said, well, what are you talking about? And we learned that the PMSs had their own thing. There were some startups, and we basically found 2 classes of problems. One was the rigidity of the incumbent or legacy solutions on the workflows that they enabled. So workflows is a big one, and configurability and how you do that. And then the second thing that we found when the newer companies out there that were VC backed that came up through this 2018 to 2022 kind of prop tech boom, they were wrappers, right? So they were nice user experience. You have your credit criminal eviction bundle that you can get from TransUnion. The good thing about that is the credit data is pretty good. It's pretty easy to get it all at one place. But the housing court data, the eviction data, the criminal data, they're on top of another solution, which is on top of another solution. So they were fairly, these newer solutions out there that were coming up were fairly surface level, and the data quality was much poorer. And it's not just as simple as say, go get a background check. Actually, there's a lot of we call it hit logic, which is Rob Whiting, 39 years old in Travis County. If I just put Rob Whiting, that's how I was booked when I was arrested and I was booked in the jail. There might be another Rob Whiting, or might be like Robert Whiting. What about Robert Whiting? What about there was a misspelling? Those happen all the time. And if you get a more common name, you can very easily pull a different record. So even just in criminal data alone, matching logic is very important and how specific you are. But the main kind of thing that I would say is like we've ended up finding out that workflows, data quality, depth, those things were all very important. And the current solutions were push a button, run a report, get a PDF. And that doesn't enable a lot of fast-moving, centralized leasing and depth when you're tied down to a PDF that the credit bureau gives you that's 2 layers above the source data, so to speak. That's where we originally thought as well. And as we dug in, we found it was much more about workflows and configurability, data quality, and depth.
If similar names are an issue that you can get entangled with other people with the same name, you could release a unique baby name generator where
Yeah.
recommended by Boom, name your baby this, and you will not get confused with other people because you're the only one with this name.
Well, and the story that I would say about this matching logic and why it's so important, I went to my school my daughter had a play. This was her current elementary school. They pulled me up and they have apparently a very basic background check solution in place. And put my name. I think they've been put Rob Whiting, and it pulled up a sex offender. Big red bar. I didn't see the screen. Big red bar on the bottom of the screen. There's a sex offender database. It's a nationwide database. It has images in there, generally speaking. This is what those sex offender, like, hey, a sex offender just moved in next to you. These apps are built on some of this publicly available data, but their hit logic must have been off. And there was an image, and the lady was like, "This clearly isn't you." The grizzled. But there was another guy, and the example that I referred to originally. That happens, and when that happens, you reject someone for housing. Now that housing was taken by someone else, it's off the market. You've curtailed someone's ability to access housing. This is serious stuff. And actually, one of our data vendors, we asked them, like, "How are we doing? How type A, detail oriented? What are our processes?" They're like, "You and this other company are our best vendors. We always bring you guys up as like, you got your processes together." And actually one of the PMSs they used to work with, they fired the PMS, one of their biggest accounts, because they were so cavalier with how they handled the data, because they could get pulled into lawsuits, even though they were just an infrastructure layer, they're still exposed as well. So we act as the CRA, the Consumer Reporting Agency. We put our name, our stamp on these reports. So we have to have our stuff together. It's a tedious business, and there's a lot of downside risk there when you take on that.
When you're an operator of any rental housing, whether it is single family rentals or manufactured housing or even multifamily, how can operators know, or what are the right questions you would suggest they ask when reviewing what credit reporting tool to implement, to partner with, to understand whether it is just a wrapper, like you said, or whether you actually have your stuff together and you're not missing qualified renters or letting fraudulent renters go through?
Yeah, I would say the things that I would ask about if I was on a demo with a screening, kind of like an underwriting company, it would really depend on the size of myself as my portfolio of the questions I asked. And it would also depend on the asset class. There are certain questions that I would ask in manufactured housing that I would not ask in single family, versus also multifamily. I would ask certain things. So one category, the obvious one, is integrations. Like, do you integrate with my PMS? What does that mean? Do you push and pull data? Do you push only on decision? Do you push on when they submit the application? Do you update every step of the way? There's a ton of nuance there. What does that look like from a data perspective? What does it look like from an applicant perspective? The ingress or the entry point into the application, what does that look like? So that integration and what user experience that enables, both from the PM and the resident side, is important. Second bucket that I would be asking about is configurability. Hey, I've got different parts of my portfolio that fall into different asset classes, or I've got an owner who wants to do something very nuanced, but he owns, X number of properties and the rest of my portfolio does something different. I've got some in a new geography. How do you handle multi-geography? If a new regulation just came up, or it would come up, how can I carve out and handle that just for that section? So this kind of configurability is a big area that I would talk about. Mm-hmm. And then I would go deep on data, definitely on what I call passive reports, credit, criminal eviction. Things that I would ask are some of the things I just mentioned. Where do you guys get your criminal data from? And if they can't answer, or they answer someone that's 2 layers above the data, then the response time to get a dispute resolved is going to be longer. That they're going to service less data, because once you go a few layers up, everyone gets a little bit more conservative the higher up in the stack. And then I would ask about the consumer-driven verifications, your identity verification, your income verification. It's not as simple to say, do you have income verification? Well, yes, but there's a lot of nuance to that. Do you verify documents? Yes, but which ones? Do you benefit letters, offer letters? Do you do it in the moment, like when they're going through the flow, and can you do it real time in seconds? Or do you do it asynchronously after they check out, how do you handle blurry docs? How do you handle locked PDFs, password protected? Then you're document chasing again. So I would bucket into integrations and how that impacts user experience, configurability, data verifications. There's a whole compliance question, like, are you set up to protect us? If you're larger, you're going to care about those things. If you're smaller, you're kind of shooting from the hip a little more. And then how do the teams collaborate is probably the last bucket. Is how do we work through applications? I think with AI, and how is a company enabled to embrace that? Really what leasing, and you asked, like, isn't screening a commodity? I kind of brought it back to workflows, but I think AI is going to enable so much. And I mean, obviously Claude has shown us what workflows can look like, but I predicted, actually, I'd say last year, the buzzword was fraud. This year, I think, and this is what I said in Christmas, we do a Christmas dinner for the team. I said, next year is going to be workflows. I think that's going to be the buzzword. I think it kind of is. And I think Claude and AI has enabled that. And people are talking about connectivity to your stack. So I would ask, like, how does your team collaborate? How do you enable AI to parallel thread most of these verifications? It's a ping pong with the applicant, right? The back and forth. So yeah, those are a host of buckets of areas that I would talk about.
Wow, that was an entire crash course. Thank you for that. So you talk about your strategic partnerships. You have an exclusive partnership with ManageAmerica, the dominant property management software in manufactured housing. So how did that come together, and what changes for operators?
It's a funny story. We were actually at our first conference we ever went to, which was MHI Congress, which is the largest, and there are many manufactured housing conferences out there. We were unboxing our booth. We'd never even opened this booth. We were like, what is it going to look like? We don't even know. So we set it up. We're sweating. We're setting up the booth. We're all ready for the next day. And the next day, it was amazing because we have this bright pink booth, and not a lot of new stuff comes through manufactured housing. So everyone was interested to hear what we were talking about. And it didn't hurt that we were giving away poker chips because we were in Las Vegas. So we're like, here's $5.
Yep.
And ManageAmerica came over and they introduced themselves. This was someone on their product team. And they said, hey, we're like new leadership. They had new private equity backing. We're going to be changing some things, and we're looking to get, we heard some things about you guys. We're interested in talking about rent reporting because we weren't really public. This was May of 2024 when we were just starting to publicly talk about, even though it wasn't on our website, we were actually actively selling Boom Screen, our applications software module. So they came over. We said, yeah, let's chat. There is some other things that we're doing as well. And then we got on the demo, and they were in process of rebuilding basically from the ground up their screening solution. They had a few vendors picked out for income, for et cetera. We just kind of showed them how they could co-build with us and get the best of one, compliance coverage, take that risk off their books where, hey, this is an arm's length, but fully integrated solution. Economics, like the scale that they brought, we were fairly new, but we had pretty good product taste and approach. And the product velocity of just like how quickly we can build, and we're laser focused on this, and this would free up their time to do other things. There's a bake-off with a handful of other vendors that they were circulating us to their client base. What do you think about Boom? What do you think about this one? And kind of we're doing a little bit of a mini roadshow. We spun up a sandbox for them, branded a sandbox. And before we went live with anyone, I think we had a roadmap that was close to a year of co-building. I mean, it had to be close to a year with hundreds of items of things that they wanted. So it was fantastic because we got this, I'd call it like a meta feedback point from them through all of their customers. And that really accelerated us to be so just dialed in for everything manufactured housing.
I love the framing of co-building. The whole conversation right now, not only about software, but especially around AI, is build versus buy. And now building in-house is a lot more cost efficient, or at least spinning up a very basic MVP. Scaling that is a whole different topic. And I think vibe coding is the buzzword of a year and a half ago or when, but certainly larger owner operators as well as the tech providers are understanding that unless we're doing this together, like you said, designing the roadmap together, having that feedback loop established, like it will be very hard to partner to work together.
100%. And I think a big part of it is the willingness to be number one, to be willing to do those cycles. We don't do a Palantir type model. Maybe we should. We don't like charge for services of embedding people. It's part of making our partners successful and to just helps our product get better. But one of the important things is the way we architected our platform is very open and configurable. And so it's all open API, read, write, anything you can see in the platform, except for a few areas of the settings are accessible via API, can be executed outside of the platform. So this really resonates with a lot of your more enterprise operators and platforms like your PMSs, like your ManageAmerica, and your big players as well, and being able to fit within their existing stack where everyone's got a little bit of some nuance. You get over a certain scale and everyone's got a special thing they do here or there.
Yep. Talking about one of your most significant partnerships, American Homes for Rent. They operate over 60,000 single-family homes across 24 states. What does a white label relationship with a company that size teach you about the market needs?
Well, we originally met them. I was on an NRHC Shark Tank. I met them very briefly, even just like the day earlier, but then I was doing this pitch competition. I didn't win, but I think I won in the end. We got to partner with them, so which was great because Philip Irby, their CTO, was in the judges audience. We kind of went from there. Their needs and where they were at, they're publicly traded, so I won't say too much, but I will say that they have a capable technical team. Technical teams want to build, but they have a huge roadmap. They've got a lot of stuff that they're doing. They had some custom stuff already. They have and you'll see this on their website, it's called Let Yourself In. It's their own self-showing solution. And they were actually in flight of building some things around screening and leasing, kind of similar to ManageAmerica, where we met them, where they were like, we're actually building something. Maybe Boom can be helpful if it looks like an open platform. But we eventually realized like their big requirements, obviously table stakes stuff, compliance, enterprise readiness, things like that, good data, great underwriting capabilities, which we've built in and really sharpened over the last couple of years. But like many of these scaled operators, brand and resident experience was important. And so what that means is, and fitting in their existing stack, which they had a custom touring solution. So some of these bigger operators will have authenticated user experiences. American Homes for Rent has My AMH. You have a user account that sits on top of their PMS where it's a layer, and they already were doing self-showing where they were doing identity verification. They were logged into My AMH, and they don't want the resident to then have to go log into Boom, create another account, things like that, go into a separate link out to another solution. And so, we kind of sketched it out with them, had a few meetings, worked internally, and we built an embedded applicant experience that was brandable, so it could reuse the identity verification that was surfaced in the touring and the tour experience. So what I learned was they want brand control, they want to own the resident experience, they want control of the data, open API, like everything needs to be accessible to the API. And then you need all the table stake stuff to check the box, obviously. And then it helps if you got a good price and your teams, they've got their own dev team, but it helps if we're supplementing it with, like I said, dev resources that they get included in this kind of co-build model that we try to do with our partners.
That's awesome. So, you've mentioned Boom Screen, Boom Report, and now you're coming out with Boom CRM. So what gap does the Boom CRM fill?
We're live with Boom CRM. It's fantastic. It's our fastest growing product, probably because we can sell into our existing base, and we've got a lot of goodwill and good word of mouth that we didn't really have when we were getting Boom Screen off the ground. And what Boom CRM is at a high level is self-showing, AI automation and syndication, auto response, an omnichannel inbox. So connect your Google account, your Outlook account. You can still send emails directly from your existing email, and it will link to the prospect that you're communicating with. Full visibility across your company, if you go out of office, things like that. And then leads, tasks, and then flowing straight into the applicant journey. Undergirding all of that is AI, but then also deterministic workflows where agents can be inserted. It's everything you would kind of expect from a modern leasing experience. What we were trying to do when we were building it was kind of leapfrog the other stuff that was on the market today. Better product, lower price, use the latest LLMs. We didn't build in 2018 and 2019 and have all this deterministic chatbot AI, I would call it, and have all that legacy and kind of start from afresh the modern principles that we would see in AI today. The gap that we were filling is when we launched Boom Screen, again, it wasn't because we decided we need to do this. Obviously, it was because we were good at integrations and our customers asked us. As we built Boom Screen, we found that the friction points that we were part of the problem. The syndicated to Zillow, you get an inquiry response via Zillow to your Zillow inbox as a resident. Then I'm getting hit up by a text message from some CRM or some solution. Then I get into the application experience, which might be a rent cafe or something like that. Then I get a link out to the income verification. I'm getting now reminders and things through that identity and income verification. And so this whole thing was, you could chalk it up to 4 to 6 logins and emails and communication channels that were coming through. And frankly, we were part of that problem. We were contributing to that. And our team, our partners were saying, look, we love Boom, but we keep jumping into this other tool and that other tool. Could we do everything around leasing in Boom? Mm-hmm. And you can't just do self-showing. Well, if you do self-showing, you kind of got to do the listings experience. You kind of have to do the syndication because that's the entry point. So that's kind of where we went. I think in multifamily, there's some scaled players in there. We tend to play more in single family manufactured housing today. We did build this to try to do better than everything we saw in the market. That said, in manufactured housing and in single family, there are significant gaps in this market where no one has really built a comprehensive structure and a comprehensive offering, and a lot of them are still angled more towards multifamily. So we just kind of followed our customers and their requests, and that's what we did.
So Yardi, RealPage, AppFolio, they sit at the center of most operators' tech stacks. How does Boom coexist with them, and where does that relationship go over time?
That's a great question. I mean, it's what any VC is asking probably about and thinking about, and it's like an obvious story, right? It's basically ERP, startup has a wedge product, you're trying to expand that service area, and some startups that are more narrow and do this wedge product are going horizontal. I won't name names, but there are a few that like, we do income verification, we do it for rental, auto, home, like we're just good at income verification and we want to put this in different verticals and do that. That's not what we're doing. We're really focused on rentals. That's our ICP, and primarily single family and manufactured housing. That's really all we can digest right now, frankly, for the most part. And I'd say like that relationship with the PMSs are getting told you need to be more open, but they don't want to be because a lot of their revenue comes from ancillary products that these startups offer, right? And so there's this push and pull. PMSs need to be open because their clients are asking for it. I think that's where the wind is blowing, right? If you look at Claude, that's what we're doing here. So I think that's where this is going. There are a few PMSs that are a bit more open, that are further nudging the market that way. They need to integrate. I think they will have to. They don't have to make every part of the API accessible, and we are blocked on some of them, and there are workarounds. With AI, it's inevitable that this is just going to end up being open. But we'd love to do things the right way and pay for it, and we do pay handsomely to several of the PMSs for that access. Where does it end up? That's anyone's guess, but there's this push and pull, and it's a competitive marketplace.
And we'll stay tuned to see how that develops and unfolds. Last but not least, Rob, collaboration superpower. If you could partner with one person, historic or living, real or fictional, who would it be?
This is not a question I think about very often. We've got a great team. I like working with them. If I had to just throw something out, I got really interested in Spotify. I don't know if you've seen the Spotify movie.
Nope. The movie.
There's a movie. Yeah, it's on Netflix, but it was great.
The playlist, the biographical drama series.
That's right. It's great. And the guy is just, he's going up against obviously going up against Apple. And it's a great story. I like people like that. I don't know if I don't know much about him or anything.
Daniel Ek? Is that what we're talking about? Daniel Ek?
Yeah, exactly. Some people like that. People that are hard-headed, hard driving, probably would end up being somewhat technical, probably just because I'm not technical.
Big fan of Daniel Ek as well. I recommend anyone interested in entrepreneurship or in tech or in even real estate to listen to any podcast that he's been on. He's doing so many more things beyond Spotify nowadays.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like he's doing longevity, healthcare, and also with all the respect to our fellow Swedes and Europeans, and I'm the biggest fan of the continent and most countries, building a multi-billion-dollar tech company in Europe, it's not that easy.
Super, super hard. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Even being in Austin, I would just say, like, I love Austin. It is a bit more family-friendly, more work-life balance than I would say New York or San Francisco, right? It's just the way it is. So I can't even imagine what it's like in Europe. It can't be that intense, I would imagine.
Rob, where can Tangent listeners and single-family rental owners and operators and manufactured home owner operators learn more about Boom and connect with you?
So our website's boompay.app. My email is just rob@boompay.app, so you can always email me.
Today, we covered a lot of ground on where rental housing is headed and the gaps that still exist underneath it. We started with the Road to Housing Act, what it changes for institutional owners, what the exemption paths mean before next year, and the potential implications for developers and tech companies. We also got into why screening is harder than it looks, why a database match isn't the same as verifying an identity, and we talked about what it looks like to build a financial layer underneath 46 million renter households when the incumbents weren't built to do it. Rob, thank you so much for coming to Tenant today and sharing your insights in your exciting company with us.
Thanks so much, Edward.
Muchas gracias. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes.